So, Senator Inhofe, we're delighted to have you with us today, and we recognize you for an opening statement.
Here, let's try that. All right. First of all, let me thank you for the invitation to be here. It's a joy. The only disappointment I have is that I'm not sitting at the same table with Administrator Jackson. I know it surprises and disappoints a lot of people, but she and I are really very good friends. I find her, a lot of liberals aren't this way, but in her case, she responds to a question, she gives you an honest answer, and I've always appreciated that. Much to the chagrin of my staff, I'm not going to use my opening statement that they prepared, but so they won't be completely overlooked, I'd like to ask that it be made a part of the record. And I'll go ahead and ramble just for a few minutes. Let me share a couple of thoughts that I have with you. First of all, this issue is a new issue to the House, relatively new. We've been dealing with it since Kyoto, since the middle 90s. And I was in the middle of it back then, and you're right, you quoted the statement that was made by some 95 to nothing in the Senate. Now that statement, to refresh memories here, was that we're not going to ratify anything that doesn't treat developing nations like developed nations or that is devastating to our economy. However, most of the senators at that time were believers, and I use the word the alarmists. I think most of them that would fit them. And so we, and I have to admit, you know, confession's good for the soul. When I was the chairman of the subcommittee, I believe the Clean Air Subcommittee of EPW, I thought too that catastrophic global warming was caused by anthropogenic gases because everybody said it was. And it wasn't until the Wharton School came out with, I think it was called the Wharton Econometric Survey. The question was this, should we ratify the Kyoto Treaty? What would it cost the people of America? And the result was a range. That range was between $300 and $400 billion a year. Then I happened to think, you know, when you get up in the billions and the trillions, it's kind of hard. You have to bring this back home. I remembered how outrageous it was when the Clinton-Gore tax increase of 1993 came through. And that was a $30 billion tax increase. I thought, wait a minute, this is 10 times greater than that. So I thought at that time, let's at least look and be sure that the science is there. And I remember at that time, there was a scientist by the name of Tom Wigley. Tom Wigley was commissioned, I believe, by then Vice President Al Gore to answer the question that if all nations, all developed nations, were to get together and agree to the Kyoto Treaty and live by their emission standards, how much would that reduce the temperature in 50 years? And the answer was something like 7/100ths of 1 degree Celsius. Well, of course, that was something that wasn't even measurable. So when we started questioning the science, all of a sudden the scientists came out of the woodwork, and they're coming in and giving testimonials about how the IPCC would not consider any views that anyone had unless they themselves were an alarmist. Well, we started talking about that, and then we obviously we did not ratify. By the way, it's important to note that the ones who are really pushing the Kyoto Treaty, that would have been the Clinton-Gore administration. They never submitted it to the Senate for ratification. So it's not our fault that we never had that before us, but they wisely did not do it. Then we started coming up with the bills. We had McCain-Lieberman of 03, McCain-Lieberman of 05, Waxman-Markey bill, the Lieberman-Warner bill, the Sanders-Boxer bill. Now, they were all very similar. Cap and trade is cap and trade. Now, you could argue, well, wait a minute, and I'm sure that Congressman Waxman would disagree with this, but all these bills, along with the Kyoto Treaty, would cost in that range of somewhere between $300 and $400 billion a year. It's not just Wharton, MIT, Penn State, and others have come in and talked about that. So when I am going to mention two, I want to end my opening statement with two quotes or responses to questions by Lisa Jackson that I have a great deal of respect for. Well, we have made a decision some time ago, and as we're passing or we're trying to defeat and successfully did defeat all the bills that I mentioned on the floor of the Senate. And one of the things I did was say, since at best the science is mixed, there's nothing conclusive in the science, but it is mixed. let's go ahead, and I did this, I think it might have been when we were debating the Waxman-Markey bill, or it might have been the Sanders-Boxer bill. I can't remember which one. But I said, even though I don't agree the science is there, let's stipulate to it so we can talk about the economics. And so we did, and that's when we started talking about the cost of this thing. I think that maybe in response to questions I can be more specific, but this bill that I will be the sponsor in the Senate, and it'll be the same wording I say to Chairman Whitfield. That's just one of the problems that we're having right now with the overregulation of the Environmental Protection Agency. We have such things as the Boiler and Utility MAC, that's a maximum achievable control technology, ozone, the PM10 dust, hydraulic fracturing, all these things to put American jobs either overseas or just kill them and destroy our economy. These things are happening right now. This is one part of it, but a very important part of it. Now, what I'm going to stay within my time frame here and make two observations, and this came from Administrator Jackson. In one of our committee hearings, and I'll tell you when it was in December of a year ago, right before, the day before I was going to go to Copenhagen. I was the one-man truth squad in Copenhagen, I might add. And before I left, I said in a hearing, Mr. Chairman, I said, Madam Administrator, I understand, and I believe that once I leave town, you're going to have an endangerment finding. And she did not deny that, and she kind of nodded with her very pleasant smile, like she always has. And I said, when you do this, it's got to be based on some kind of science. What science would you base this on? And she said, well, primarily it's the IPCC, that's the United Nations. Well, that was right in the middle of the time that they had been totally debunked. Now, they try to say that ClimateGate wasn't a real thing. It was. It's tried to be. They tried to play it down. Let me just real quickly, so it's in the record, talk about Atlantic magazine said the closed-mindedness of these supposed men of science, their willingness to go to any length to defend in a preconceived message is surprising even to me. The stink of intellectual corruption is overpowering. The statement, Atlantic, the Daily Telegraph, this is the largest one in London. The scandal could well be the greatest scandal in science, modern science. So we have this, all of the fact that this is the science on which this is based, and I'm hoping that people are going to keep this in the dialogue and let people know how phony this was. The other thing was, and I'm speaking now to the many people out, not just in my state of Oklahoma, but throughout America, who think I'm wrong on this issue. People who really believe, people who think that the alarmists are right, that in fact that this is that these the anthropogenic gases are causing catastrophic global warming. To them, I say this: if they're right, what difference does this really make? Because when I asked the question to Administrator Jackson, I said, if we were to pass this bill, I don't know, I say to my good friend, Mr. Waxman, whether it was the Waxman-Markey bill or which bill it was, but I said, if we pass this, will this have a reduction, a result in reducing greenhouse gases? Her answer was no, because this only applies to the United States. I would carry it one step further. If we cause our jobs to go overseas as a result of having something like this, those jobs are going to go to places like China and India and Mexico where they don't have any restrictions at all. And so those people who say, well, we have to set the example in America, that China is anxious to follow our great example, I say they're laughing at us right now. They're not going to do it. They're waiting for those jobs to come over. So with that, I would only say that I hope we'll get a chance to realize that even if this ends up, those people out here that really believe this, what we take, action that we take, whether it's through regulation or whether it's through legislation here in the United States, is not going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Senator.